I want you to just take a second and imagine something. Like really put yourself there physically.
Right, getting into the right mindset for this one is key.
Exactly. So you are standing on this narrow coastal pass. And to your left, there's a sheer, brutal mountain wall just shooting straight up into the sky.
And then right on your other side, to your right, the ocean is lapping just a few meters away.
Yeah, and it is August 480 BC. You are just sweltering inside about 35 kilograms of bronze and thick linen armor.
Sounds completely miserable, honestly.
Oh, for sure. The air smells heavily of sulfur from the nearby hot springs, and the ground beneath your sandals is like literally vibrating.
Because you hear it before you see it.
Yes, the rhythmic, earth-shaking march of a literal empire approaching. Hundreds of thousands of men drawn from across the known world just marching directly toward you.
It's terrifying to even picture.
And the fate of Western civilization hinges on this tiny strip of land you're standing on, which is just 6 to 7 meters wide.
It is the absolute ultimate bottleneck. I mean, it's the purest test of defensive military logic against overwhelming numbers that we have in recorded history.
And that is exactly the mission of our deep dive today. We are going to move completely beyond, the Hollywood myth of the 300 Spartans.
Right, because there's so much more to it than just the cinematic aesthetic.
Exactly. If you've seen the movies, you know the vibe. But we want to unpack the actual geopolitical stakes, the tactical genius, and the stark geographic reality of the Battle of Thermopylae.
Because Thermopylae was not just this suicidal act of heroism, as it's so often portrayed in pop culture.
Right.
It was a masterclass in the military science of using defensive choke points to just completely nullify a massive, diverse imperial army. It was a calculated, brilliant, and, well, ultimately tragic use of terrain.
And to do this properly, to really get into the absolute granular detail of how this worked, we have an incredible foundation for today.
We really do.
This deep dive is built entirely upon a rigorous research study by Mick Prichter over at battlefieldtravels.com. And his work is fantastic because he doesn't just read the ancient texts and summarize them for us.
No, he goes way beyond that.
Right. He draws on the primary sources, of course, like Herodotus, but he combines that with his own firsthand exploration of the battlefield. Like, he's been physically walking that ground since the year 2000.
Which is so crucial for understanding the spatial reality of a battle.
Definitely. And crucially, he uses advanced GIS, a geographic information system, digital terrain analysis, to recreate what the landscape actually looked like back then.
Because if you go there today,
Yeah.
as we're going to explore, it looks very, very different.
So different. So we're taking his meticulous on-the-ground research and unpacking the how and the why of this legendary stand.
Yeah, when you combine military doctrine with geographical science, you stop seeing legends and you start seeing actual military science at work. You start to understand the agonizing decisions these commanders had to make.
We really have to start with the strategic context, though, like the gathering storm before the battle.
Right, the setup.
Because the Persian Empire didn't just wake up one morning, look at a map, and decide to march on a narrow mountain pass in Greece.
No, this was a long time coming.
Yeah.
This was generational.
So to understand the motivations here, we have to look back a decade earlier, right, to 490 BC.
Exactly. The Achaemenid Empire was just vast. I mean, we are talking about a superpower stretching from modern-day India all the way to Egypt.
Oh.
It was founded by Cyrus the Great and expanded by Darius the First. And under Darius, they had actually launched what we call the first Persian invasion of Greece.
And why did they do that? Was it just pure conquest?
Well, Darius wanted to punish the city-states of Athens and Eretria because they had supported the Ionian Revolt,
Okay.
which was essentially a rebellion of Greek cities on the coast of modern-day Turkey against Persian rule. But that first invasion ended in a shocking, humiliating failure at the Battle of Marathon.
Where a much smaller Athenian force basically defeated the Persian army right on the beachhead.
Yeah, and you do not humiliate the Achaemenid Empire and just get away with it.
I can't even imagine the political fallout back in the Persian capital. It must have been immense.
It was a massive dynastic affront. I mean, in an empire built on conquest and perceived invincibility,
Yeah.
a defeat like Marathon just shatters the illusion of absolute power.
So they had something to prove.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So when Darius' son, King Xerxes I, ascends to the throne in 486 BC, he inherits this unfinished business.
But Xerxes isn't just looking for a punitive expedition like his father, is he?
Not at all. He's not just trying to burn a few buildings in Athens. His motivation is total subjugation. He wants to absorb all of Greece.
He wants to integrate these troublesome, independent city-states into the Persian satrapy system and just permanently neutralize Athens and Sparta as threats to his imperial stability.
Exactly. He goes all in.
And when you read the sources, Herodotus talks about Xerxes spending years just amassing this force. I mean, I'm struggling to even conceptualize the logistics of this for the ancient world.
It's mind-boggling.
They are building massive supply depots along the route in Thrace. He has his engineers construct literal pontoon bridges across the Hellespont,
Tying hundreds of ships together with massive flax and papyrus cables.
just to march his army from Asia into Europe. He even has them dig a massive navigable canal through the Athos Peninsula so his fleet doesn't get wrecked by storms like a previous expedition did.
The engineering is incredible.
But how do you even feed an army of that size on the march in 480 BC?
That is the defining vulnerability of the Persian war machine right there. When you mobilize an imperial levy of this magnitude, and estimates range wildly, but modern consensus puts it somewhere between 100,000 and 250,000 combatants.
Which is just a staggering number of people for that time.
Plus fleet personnel and camp followers.
Yeah.
You are moving a literal walking city.
Right.
The daily caloric requirements, the need for fresh water for hundreds of thousands of men and tens of thousands of horses and draft animals, it dictates your entire strategy.
So they can't just hang out and wait.
No, you cannot afford to be bogged down. You cannot afford a war of attrition. You must move constantly forward to new supply bases, or you rely entirely on your fleet sailing parallel to the coast to supply you.
So the sheer size of the army is its greatest weapon, but also its most fragile Achilles heel. They need a fast, decisive victory.
Precisely. It was an imperial mobilization on a scale the Mediterranean had just never seen.
And on the other side of this looming catastrophe, you have the Greeks.
Who are a mess, politically speaking.
Total mess. The Greek city-states were the exact opposite of a unified empire. They were fiercely independent, politically fragmented, and they possessed these long-standing, bitter rivalries.
Athens and Sparta were rivals. Corinth and Thebes had their own competing agendas. It was a deeply fractured, almost chaotic political landscape.
Which brings me to a massive strategic question. I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a Greek diplomat in 481 BC.
Good luck with that.
Right. How do you forge a unified military command out of rival states that actively distrust each other?
It's a huge challenge.
Especially when you have major states like Argos declaring absolute neutrality, and Thebes is widely suspected of treachery, like basically waiting to see who is going to win before picking a side.
Yeah, the Theban situation was tense.
What is the game theory there that prevents them all from just surrendering individually to save their own cities?
That is the core of the Greek crisis. Coalition warfare is incredibly fragile even today, with modern communications and shared economic interests.
Right, look at modern alliances.
Exactly. But in the ancient world, getting Sparta, Athens, and Corinth to agree on a unified command structure was nearly impossible. What forced their hand was simply the existential scale of the Persian threat.
Because they knew surrender wasn't a safe bet.
Surrender didn't just mean paying taxes. For cities like Athens, they believed it meant total destruction based on their past actions during the revolt.
That makes sense.
So in 481 BC, a congress of these city-states is held at the Isthmus of Corinth, and they form what we call the Hellenic League. It's an emergency, wartime alliance of roughly 31 states.
But wait, 31 states out of hundreds of Greek city-states, it's a tiny minority that actually decides to fight.
It really is. It's a desperate coalition.
So how did they divide up the leadership?
They agree that Sparta, possessing the most respected and feared land army in Greece, will take overarching military command on land.
Makes sense.
And Athens, which had recently used a windfall of silver from their mines to build a massive new navy of triremes, they will form the backbone of the sea defense.
I have to push back on that a bit, though. If they hate each other, how does a Spartan general give orders to an Athenian admiral without a mutiny?
Oh, there was constant, near-paralyzing friction.
I can imagine.
You have commanders who possess entirely different military doctrines, troops who have fought bloody wars against the guys standing right next to them just a few years prior.
Wow, that's tense.
But they are united by pure terror. Xerxes' army is already marching through Thrace and Macedonia. They have crossed the Hellespont. They are coming down the coast.
So the clock is ticking.
Yes. The Greeks know, mathematically, they cannot face this Persian army on an open plain in northern Greece. They simply do not have the numbers, and they lack the cavalry to prevent being flanked and annihilated.
So they need a desperate time-buying strategy. They can't win a pitched battle in the open, but they can't retreat forever because eventually the Persians will reach their cities.
Right, they need to mobilize their full forces, they need to get the fleet into a defensive posture, and they need to prepare defenses further south, particularly at the Isthmus of Corinth.
But to buy that time against an army moving down the coast, you can't fight a war of maneuver.
No, you have to force the enemy to fight on your terms. You have to leverage geography.
You need to find a door, close it, and just stand in front of it.
That's a great way to put it.
Because if you can't match their numbers, you have to find a place where their numbers literally don't fit. And that takes us right into the geography of defiance, the choice of Thermopylae.
Which translates to the hot gates.
Yes. What is truly fascinating here, and what McPrichter's research emphasizes so heavily, is how entirely geography dictates military strategy in this campaign.
The geography is everything here.
The Greek plan wasn't just to hide in a pass. It was a brilliant, synchronized application of land and sea power.
Right, because you can't ignore the naval aspect.
Exactly. They chose Thermopylae because it was a narrow defile nestled tightly between the sheer, impassable cliffs of the Calidromas Mountains and the waters of the Malian Gulf.
But critically, at the exact same time, the Greek fleet positioned itself off the northern coast of the nearby island of Euboea at a place called Artemisium.
So they are essentially plugging the drain on both land and sea simultaneously. You can't really separate Thermopylae from Artemisium.
You absolutely cannot. They are two halves of the same geographic lock.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, if the army holds the pass at Thermopylae, the Persian land forces can't get into central and southern Greece to burn the farmlands and cities.
Right.
But if the Greek navy doesn't hold Artemisium, the Persian fleet could just sail right past Thermopylae, land troops behind the Spartan lines, and slaughter them from the rear.
Which would defeat the whole purpose of the choke point.
Exactly.
What?
And conversely, if the army at Thermopylae fails, the Persians march down the coast, take the beaches, and deprive the Greek navy of anywhere to land and resupply, essentially destroying the fleet.
It's this terrifying interdependency. But let's zoom in on the land side, on Thermopylae itself.
Let's do it.
Because when we say it was a narrow pass, I think modern listeners picture a valley between two mountains.
That's usually what comes to mind, yeah.
But this was essentially a cliff face dropping almost directly into the ocean, right?
In 480 BC, at its narrowest point, which they called the Middle Gate, this pass was only 6 to 7 meters wide.
I really want you, listening right now, to visualize that. 6 to 7 meters.
It's tiny.
That is the width of a two-lane suburban street. You have an empire of hundreds of thousands of men marching toward you, and they all have to try to squeeze through a two-lane road with a mountain on one side and the sea on the other.
By identifying and holding this specific choke point, the Greek commanders, led by the Spartan king Leonidas, entirely nullified the Persian numerical advantage.
Because you just can't fit that many guys in the gap.
Exactly. It literally did not matter if Xerxes had 100,000 men or the 2 million men that Herodotus famously, though inaccurately, claimed.
Right, Herodotus loved to exaggerate.
He did, but practically only a few dozen men could physically swing a weapon at any one time in a space that small.
But Leonidas didn't just point to a narrow spot on a map and say, "We fight there."
No, he was much smarter than that.
When you dig into the GIS terrain analysis from the source material, you realize Leonidas demonstrated an absolute masterful grasp of microterrain.
And this is a crucial concept in military history. Microterrain involves the small scale, features a slight elevation, a ruined wall, a muddy patch that don't always show up on a general strategic map.
But they make all the difference on the ground.
Yes. When you're standing on the ground, making life or death decisions, they dictate the entire flow of battle.
So what microterrain did he use?
Leonidas anchored his small coalition force behind the remains of the ancient Phocian wall.
Okay, what was that?
This was a ruined stone fortification built across the narrowest part of the pass by the local Phocians years earlier. He had his men rebuild it.
Oh, smart.
This provided a physical barrier to further canalize the enemy and protect his men between assaults.
And he also recognized the glaring vulnerability of the position, didn't he? Because no defensive line is perfect.
Right. There was a secret goat track, the Anopaea path.
Yeah, tell me about that.
It wound its way up and over the Calidromas Mountains. If the Persians found it, they could bypass the gate entirely and come down behind the Greeks.
A total nightmare scenario.
So Leonidas doesn't just hope they miss it. He immediately dispatches 1,000 hoplites from the local region of Phocis to go up into the mountains, into the dense oak forests, and guard that hidden path.
It shows incredible situational awareness. He is using every single element of the local geography to rebalance the overwhelming odds.
He really is.
But to truly understand how extreme this terrain was, we have to talk about how the landscape has actually changed.
This is so important.
Because I'm sure some listeners have seen photos of Thermopylae today, or, maybe driven past it on the modern Greek highway, and it doesn't look like a narrow pass at all.
Not even close.
I was totally shocked the first time I saw a modern aerial photo. It looks like a massive multi-lane highway running next to a wide, flat agricultural plain that stretches for miles before you hit the water.
Yeah, it's completely open now.
If you stood there today, you'd think, what pass? I could march 1,000,000 men across this open field in an afternoon. This is a terrible place for a defensive stand.
And that is exactly why Prichter's GIS terrain analysis is so vital to this deep dive. You cannot understand ancient battles without understanding geology and geomorphology.
So what actually happened to the land?
Well, over the last 2.5 millennia, the Spercheios River, which empties into the Gulf nearby, has been constantly depositing silt and sediment.
Okay, so it's filling in the bay.
Exactly. This sedimentation has actually pushed the modern coastline out by roughly 5 kilometers from where it was in 480 BC.
5 kilometers of new land just built up by river mud over thousands of years.
It's crazy to think about.
So the ancient battlefield, the actual shoreline where the Greeks fought, is essentially buried under 2,500 years of dirt, and the sea has just retreated completely out of sight.
Exactly. This is why Prichter used digital terrain modeling. In his study, he created a 3D fly-through using Google Earth Pro.
Oh, that's so cool.
What he did was take the modern elevation data and virtually raise the water level by 17 meters.
Wait, why raise the water level?
Now, the sea level didn't actually drop 17 meters. Rather, the land rose due to sediment and tectonic activity over the centuries.
Got it. So it's a way to simulate the old coastline.
Right. By simulating a 17-meter rise in the water level, he approximates where the ancient shoreline used to intersect with the mountain base.
And when you look at that 3D model, the brutal reality of the ancient geography just snaps into focus instantly.
It really does.
Suddenly, the water is right up against the sheer base of the cliffs again. You see exactly why the site of the Phocian Wall and the small mound known as Kolonos Hill marked the absolute narrowest bottleneck.
You could finally see the track.
It is physically impossible to grasp the claustrophobic constraints Leonidas was working with unless you use this kind of digital reconstruction to just strip away the modern sedimentation.
And once we established exactly where this battle had to be fought, the physical, terrifying constraints of that 6-meter gap between rock and water, it perfectly dictates who needs to fight it and how they are going to fight.
Right, the terrain chose the tactics.
The terrain demanded a very specific type of soldier, which brings us to the collision of these two vastly different military machines.
I really want to spend some time looking at the armies because the contrast here is just staggering. It's imperial diversity versus the heavy phalanx.
It's a fascinating matchup.
You have King Xerxes bringing this massive pan-Eurasian imperial levy. As we noted, maybe 100,000 to 250,000 men.
Huge numbers.
And the diversity of this army is incredible. You've got Medes, Scythians from the steppes, Egyptians, Babylonians, Phoenicians, even some Ionian Greeks who had been conquered and conscripted.
Yeah, an incredibly diverse force.
And, of course, the absolute elite of the Persian force, the 10,000 immortals.
It was likely the most diverse military force the ancient world had ever assembled.
But doesn't that cause problems?
Oh, definitely. From a military logistics and command perspective, that diversity creates massive challenges.
I'd imagine communication alone was a nightmare.
You have a diversity of equipment, totally different training standards, and a dozen different languages, all of which makes command and control in the heat of battle incredibly difficult.
And opposed to this massive, sprawling imperial wave, you have King Leonidas of Sparta leading a tiny coalition.
Right.
And here is a crucial point that always surprises people. Leonidas doesn't bring the whole Spartan army.
A lot of people don't realize that.
He only brings his personal bodyguard, the 300 elite Spartan hippes, and there's a really specific, almost heartbreaking rule about who gets to be in this 300.
Yeah, tell them about this. It's wild.
They weren't just the strongest guys. They all had to be men who were already fathers of living sons.
Right, and we need to explain why that is. This highlights the severe religious, cultural, and demographic constraints Sparta was operating under.
What was going on back home?
Well, when the Persians invaded, it was late summer. Two major religious festivals were happening. The Olympic Games, which required a Panhellenic truce, and the Spartan Carnea festival, dedicated to Apollo.
And they took that seriously.
Very seriously. By absolute Spartan law and custom, military operations were completely suspended during the Carnea. To march, the whole army would be seen as sacrilege, inviting the wrath of the gods.
But surely they knew that if they do nothing, the gods won't matter because Greece will fall.
You'd think so, but religion was a powerful force.
There's also the internal political threat, right? The Spartans were always terrified of a Helot uprising.
Their massive enslaved population, yes.
If the main army marched too far away from home, they worried the Helots would revolt.
You're touching on the fundamental paranoia of the Spartan state. They were a military elite ruling over a vastly larger subjugated population. They couldn't just empty their city.
It was a powder keg.
So Leonidas takes a desperate, calculated middle course. He takes an advance guard. He takes 300 Spartans whose family lines are already secured with male heirs.
Meaning, if they march north and die, their bloodline won't be extinguished, and the demographic stability of the Spartan elite class is maintained.
Exactly. And as he marches north, he gathers allied contingents from the Hellenic League. Peloponnesians, Arcadians, Corinthians, Thespians, Thebans.
So he's picking up allies on the way.
So by the time he reaches the Hot Gates, he has assembled a coalition force of roughly 7,000 heavy infantry.
7,000 against maybe 200,000. But the numbers don't tell the story. The tactics do.
That's the key.
I want to try to visualize this clash. Think of the Persian army like a highly mobile, wide-flanking cavalry and light infantry force designed for open plains and enveloping maneuvers, suddenly forced to fight a brutal, close-quarters riot-control battle inside a narrow tunnel.
That is an excellent way to frame it.
Their greatest strengths, mobility, archery, and sheer numbers, instantly became their biggest liabilities.
Let's look at the biomechanics and the equipment, because that dictates everything. The Persian military doctrine relied on massed archery, rapid cavalry flanking maneuvers, and sheer volume of troops to break the enemy's morale.
Right.
The infantry were generally lightly armored, built for mobility. They wore quilted tunics or leather caps. Only the very elites might have had bronze scale armor beneath their tunics.
And their shields were made of wicker, right? The spare.
Yes, tall rectangular wicker shields. Now, on an open plain, a wall of wicker shields is fantastic for stopping spent arrows from a distance while your own archers fire back over the top.
Makes sense for their usual tactics.
But in a brutal hand-to-hand melee where heavy weapons are swinging, wicker is terrible.
It's just gonna shatter.
They fought with shorter spears, light axes, and short swords. They are built for speed, for shooting thousands of arrows, and for enveloping the enemy.
But in a 6-meter wide pass with a cliff on one side and the ocean on the other, you can't flank.
You can't maneuver at all.
You just have to walk straight forward into what is essentially a hydraulic press of bronze and ash wood. And that press is the Greek heavy phalanx.
The Greek hoplite was fundamentally designed for a totally different kind of war. They were armored shock troops. Each man is carrying roughly 30 to 35 kilograms of equipment.
I really want to emphasize the physical toll of that. 35 kilograms.
It's incredibly heavy.
That is heavy, especially in the sweltering Greek summer heat. We are talking about a full bronze Corinthian helmet. And if you've seen one of these, it covers the whole face, leaving just small slits for the eyes and a gap for breathing.
You have almost no peripheral vision, and you can barely hear anything over the din of battle.
Yeah, it must be so disorienting. Then you have heavy bronze greaves protecting the shins, and a heavy bronze cuirass or a stiffened linen lenothorax wrapping the torso.
And the defining feature, the weapon system that gave them their name, the hoplon or aspis shield.
Tell us about the shield.
It's a massive bowl-shaped bronze-faced wooden shield, about 1 meter in diameter, weighing maybe 7 or 8 kilograms.
Wow, just the shield is that heavy.
Yeah, it's so large and heavy that you don't just hold it by a central handle. You slide your left forearm through a central bronze band called the porpax and grip a leather strap at the edge called the antilabe.
And the geometry of this is what makes the phalanx work. Because the shield is on your left arm, it covers your left side, but it extends out past your body.
Right.
So crucially, it overlaps with the man standing to your left, protecting his right, unshielded side.
Exactly. It creates a literal interlocking wall of bronze and wood. You are trusting your life to the man standing to your right.
That requires so much trust.
And protruding from that wall of shields is the dory, a massive thrusting spear, about 2 to 2.5 meters long. It has an iron spearhead for thrusting into gaps in armor and a heavy bronze spike on the butt end called a sorotor, a lizard killer.
Okay, why put a spike on the back end? That seems dangerous to the guy behind you.
Well, there are several reasons. It counterbalances the heavy iron tip, making the long spear easier to wield with one hand.
Oh, that makes sense.
It also allows you to plant the spear upright in the dirt during a rest. And critically, if the front shaft snaps in the crush of combat, you can flip it around and use the bronze spike as a backup weapon.
So it's a built-in plan B.
Exactly. Or, as the rear ranks march forward over fallen enemies, they use the downward-facing spike to finish them off.
It is a terrifying piece of military engineering. So when the lightly armored Persians advance, their short spears literally cannot even reach the Greeks before they are impaled by the much longer Greek dory.
They're dead before they even get in range.
And the wicker shields of the Persians are just shattered by the sheer weight and density of the hoplite formation pushing forward. This is the tactic they called the othismos, the shove.
The okismos is the defining, brutal mechanic of hoplite warfare. It wasn't just a fencing match, it was a massive rugby scrum with spears.
A very deadly rugby scrum.
The men in the rear ranks literally press their shields into the backs of the men in front of them, driving the entire mass forward, crushing the enemy line through sheer kinetic force.
And anchoring this entire terrifying formation, providing the unbreakable core, are the 300 Spartans. I feel like we have to talk about why the Spartans were uniquely suited to anchor this line, which really comes down to their training system, the agoj.
The agoj was a brutal, state-sponsored, educational and military training program that every Spartan male citizen was subjected to from the age of 7.
7 years old. That's so young.
They were taken from their mothers and placed in communal barracks. It was designed to systematically strip away individuality and forge absolute, unbreakable unit cohesion.
They were essentially brainwashed for war.
They were subjected to institutionalized hazing, trained to endure extreme pain, starvation, cold, and physical hardship.
It sounds like lifelong, systematized trauma repurposed for state military discipline.
That's a very accurate way to look at it.
They aren't just brave because they love their country. They are mechanically perfect soldiers because they've been programmed that way since childhood.
Right. They don't break rank, they don't panic, they don't question orders, and they move as a single terrifying organism.
And because Leonidas has this core of 300 mechanically perfect super soldiers, they act as the anchor for the entire 7,000-man coalition force. They set the standard.
Exactly.
If the Spartans aren't running, the Arcadians next to them aren't going to run either.
This raises a vital point about the coalition dynamics. The other Greeks, the Corinthians, the Thespians, they are essentially citizen militias.
Right. They have day jobs.
They are incredibly brave, heavily armored men, but they are farmers, blacksmiths, and merchants who fight in the summer.
Not full-time soldiers.
The Spartans are the only professional, full-time dedicated soldiers in all of Greece. Because their slave class, the helots, do all the farming and labor, the Spartan male has literally nothing else to do from birth to death but train for war.
And by placing them at the most critical points in the pass, Leonidas stiffens the resolve of the entire line. So we have the pieces on the board. The geographic tunnel is set. The heavily armored Greeks are locking their shields, blocking it. The lightly armored, massive Persian army is staring them down. Let's move into the kinetic action. The absolute meat grinder of the first 48 hours of combat, days 1 and 2.
Xerxes arrives at the pass, establishes his massive camp on the flat plains to the west, and he just waits.
What is he waiting for?
He expects the Greeks to look at the sheer, unimaginable size of his army and simply break ranks and run away in terror.
I mean, statistically, that is usually how it works when a superpower shows up at your door. You intimidate them into submission before a sword is even swung.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a standard imperial tactic. But after waiting 4 days and realizing the Greeks are just calmly doing gymnastics and combing their long hair in front of the wall.
Which deeply confused the Persian scouts, right?
It baffled them. But Xerxes realizes they aren't leaving. So on the 5th day, the battle finally commences. Xerxes orders his Median and Sigean troops into a frontal assault.
Okay, here we go.
These are proud, highly capable warriors of the empire, but they are thrown into a tactical nightmare.
They charge into the 6-meter gap, and it's just a slaughter. The Persians are constrained by the sheer mountain wall on their right and the ocean on their left.
They cannot bring their massive numbers to bear.
The Greeks behind that rebuilt Phocian wall are just systematically dismantling them. The longer reach of the Greek spears and the impenetrable bronze armor mean the Persians are dying in droves while barely inflicting a scratch on the defenders.
And what's truly fascinating here is the tactical sophistication the Greeks deploy. They don't just stand there statically like a brick wall until they drop from exhaustion.
Yeah, they had a
They
system.
utilize a complex tactic of rotating the front rank.
I have always wondered about the mechanics of this. If you are packed shoulder to shoulder, shields overlapping, the othismos pushing from behind,
It seems impossible.
yeah, how on earth does an exhausted guy step back without breaking the wall and getting everyone killed?
It requires supreme drill and discipline, which is exactly what the Agoj provided. The phalanx drill allows fresh fighters from the rear ranks to cycle forward into the shield wall.
Just slipping through the cracks.
Basically, during momentary lulls in the pushing, or by briefly opening a narrow file, an exhausted man can slip back while a fresh man steps seamlessly into his place.
Herodotus actually noted the psychological effect of this. He said the Greeks created the illusion of infinite numbers.
It's brilliant psychological warfare.
Imagine being a Persian soldier. You're fighting desperately for 20 minutes just to kill one Greek in the front row. You finally exhaust him, he lowers his spear, and a completely fresh, fully energized Spartan steps right into his place, thrusting a fresh 2.5-meter spear at your face.
It must have been psychologically devastating. It maintained continuous, relentless pressure on the Persian assaults.
It is the absolute pinnacle of unit discipline. And this leads us to a stark, fascinating contrast in leadership styles over these first 2 days.
Yes, consider the physical positioning of the commanders.
Let's hear it.
Xerxes is observing the battle from a golden throne set up near the pass, surrounded by his retinue. He is a god king, managing a massive logistical and strategic enterprise, relying on the sheer weight of numbers to achieve a psychological collapse of the enemy.
He expects them to break because everyone breaks when they see the might of the Persian Empire.
That's his entire worldview.
But then you look at Leonidas, he is not sitting on a throne in the rear. He is commanding from the very front lines.
Down in the dirt.
He is managing these fragile coalition troops dynamically, ensuring that the Arcadians spell the Corinthians, that the Spartans hold the most critical sectors when the pressure is highest.
He's making tactical adjustments constantly.
He is using the microterrain of the Phocian wall to shelter his men from arrows between infantry assaults. He is literally bleeding in the dirt with his soldiers.
It is the defining difference between imperial management and tactical frontline combat leadership.
So day one ends. What happens next?
By the end of day one, the Medes and Scythians fall back, having suffered horrific casualties and failing to budge the Greek line a single inch. So on day two, Xerxes decides to play his trump card.
Here come the heavy hitters.
He sends in the 10,000 immortals.
These are the guys, the elite of the elite. The emperor's personal shock troops.
The absolute best he has.
They are called the immortals because if one dies or gets sick, he is immediately replaced from a reserve pool, so their number is always exactly 10,000 on the field.
It's psychological warfare just as much as military might.
They wore golden jewelry, scale armor beneath their robes, and carried spears with silver and gold counterweights.
But the reality of terrain does not care about your elite status or your gold jewelry.
No, it does not.
The immortals marched into the exact same geographical meat grinder. They still had shorter spears than the Greeks. They still lacked heavy bronze armor on their limbs and heads.
The geography just neutralizes their advantages.
The narrowness of the pass completely neutralized their elite training in rapid flanking and massed archery.
The Greeks even used feigned retreats against them. This is my favorite tactical detail.
Oh, it's so good.
The Spartans would pretend to break and run away in a panic, drawing the immortals into a disorganized pursuit down the narrow pass.
Baiting them in.
And then, on a single, perfectly timed command, the Spartans would wheel around in unison, lock shields, and slaughter the disorganized Persians who had broken their own formation to chase them.
It was a masterclass in exploiting overconfidence.
By the end of day two, the immortals are repulsed, taking terrible losses. Xerxes is supposedly leaping up from his throne in absolute terror and rage as he watches his best untouchable troops get butchered.
For 2 full days, the Greek defensive strategy has worked flawlessly.
But I want to pause here and consider the sheer psychological toll of this on the defenders.
It's hard to fathom.
You are holding a line against an enemy that seems limitless. Mountains of bodies are literally piling up in front of you, creating an obstacle course of gore.
Just horrific conditions.
The summer heat is oppressive. The smell must have been unimaginable. You are covered in blood and sweat, drinking whatever water runners can bring you.
And you know there's no end in sight.
How does a commander keep a fragile coalition of rival city-states from completely breaking under that immense, suffocating psychological pressure?
That is the perfect question, and it takes us right into one of the most fascinating aspects of this deep dive. Because the Spartans didn't just fight with bronze spears, they fought with words.
Or rather, a very specific, deliberate lack of words.
Exactly.
We have to take a quick pause from the kinetic combat to look at the culture of Laconia, the region the Spartans called home, and how it shaped their battlefield psychology.
Right. The inhabitants of this region were Lacedaemonians.
Yeah.
And they cultivated a very specific cultural trait that we still use in English today. The word laconic, meaning a extreme brevity or conciseness of speech.
They hated long speeches, right?
They despised long, flowery rhetoric, which they heavily associated with Athenians.
And these laconic quips from Thermopylae are legendary. They are the ultimate mic drops of antiquity.
They really are.
The most famous one happens before the battle even starts. A Persian envoy, or perhaps a local ally to the Persians, is trying to intimidate the Greeks. He boasts about the sheer size of the Persian army, and he says, "When our archers fire, our arrows will be so numerous they will blot out the sun."
A classic intimidation tactic.
And a Spartan veteran named Dieneces just deadpans, "Then we shall fight in the shade."
It's a brilliant deflection. And another famous exchange occurs when Xerxes sends an envoy demanding that the Greeks surrender and hand over their weapons.
Right.
Leonidas simply replies with two words in Greek, molon, which translates directly to "come and take them."
It gives you chills just hearing it. But I have to admit, when I first learned about these quotes years ago, I thought they were just action movie one-liners, like a Hollywood scriptwriter giving the hero a cool thing to say.
Yeah, they sound almost too good to be true.
But Prichter's research and broader military analysis point out that these weren't just guys trying to sound tough. This brevity of speech was a highly deliberate, highly evolved military tool.
Exactly. If we analyze the psychology of combat, panic is a contagion. It spreads faster than any disease.
Oh, for sure.
If one soldier in a shield wall starts expressing fear, talking about how big the enemy army is, how many arrows they have, how they're all going to die, that fear spreads through the ranks like wildfire.
Especially with those allied troops.
Right. This is especially dangerous in a coalition force of non-professional militia like the Arcadians or Corinthians standing next to the Spartans. The Spartans used laconic communication to project an absolute, impenetrable aura of stoicism.
So when Dieneces says, "we will fight in the shade," he isn't just being witty. He is instantly deflating the psychological weapon the Persians just tried to use.
He totally disarms it.
He takes a terrifying, paralyzing image, millions of arrows blotting out the sun, and turns it into a joke about getting some relief from the hot Greek summer.
Right.
He's sending a signal to the terrified Arcadian farmer standing next to him, saying, "This isn't a big deal. The Spartans aren't worried. You shouldn't be either."
It entirely defined their unit leadership style. They commanded through calm, almost arrogant defiance rather than long, impassioned speeches.
Because nobody's going to hear a speech anyway.
Exactly. In the chaos, noise, and terror of a battle line, a long speech is useless. No one can hear it. But a sharp, fearless, two-word command, that anchors the mind.
It cuts right through the noise.
It enforces discipline. Laconic speech was a vital mechanism of command and control under extreme stress.
It is weaponized stoicism. It held the coalition together when logic said they should run. But, stoicism can only delay the inevitable.
Unfortunately, yes.
As we transition back to the tactical map, the Greeks absolutely dominate the front of the pass. They have proven the frontal assault is suicide. But a critical, devastating vulnerability is about to be exposed in the rear.
Which brings us to the betrayal and the final stand.
We are now at the night of the second day.
The Persians are battered, their elites are demoralized, and Xerxes is reportedly despondent, unsure of how to proceed.
But then,
a local Greek man named Ephialtes of Trachis comes to the Persian camp. He approaches Xerxes with critical intelligence.
the ultimate traitor.
He knows the local geography intimately. He knows about the Anopaea path, that hidden goat track winding high over the Kalidromos Mountains, the very path that Leonidas had sent the 1,000 Phocians to guard.
And for the promise of a rich reward from the emperor, Ephialtes sells out Western civilization. He offers to guide the Persians up and over the mountain to outflank the Greek position entirely.
Xerxes doesn't hesitate. He immediately dispatches General Hydarnes with a picked force,
Yeah.
likely the surviving immortals.
So they go under cover of night.
Under the cover of darkness, they begin the grueling, steep climb up the mountain path. As dawn breaks on the third day, they approach the summit and they encounter the Phocian sentries.
And this is where the micro-decisions of war, made in a split second of confusion, just change history forever.
It's a tragic moment.
The Phocians are stationed there. They hear the rustling in the dry oak leaves. They scramble to put on their armor. But instead of rushing forward to hold the narrowest part of the mountain path where they could have blocked the Persians,
Which they probably could have done.
yeah, they are startled by the sudden, massive appearance of the elite immortals emerging from the trees. The Phocians make a fatal assumption. They mistakenly believe that they, the Phocians, are the primary target of this Persian maneuver.
Right, they think they're being attacked directly.
So they withdraw away from the path, moving to higher, more defensible ground to make a stand, preparing to fight to the death.
It is a tragic miscalculation born of the fog of war. Because Hydarnes and the Immortals do not care about the Phocians. They have strict orders.
They just bypass them.
They don't engage. They just march right past the Phocians down the other side of the mountain, moving directly toward the unprotected rear of Leonidas's position in the pass below.
The back door has been left wide open.
Exactly.
So we arrive at the morning of day 3. The sun is coming up. Leonidas receives word from runners, or perhaps from local scouts, that the Phocians have been bypassed and the Immortals are coming down the mountain behind them.
He knows the game is up.
The encirclement is happening. The pass is now completely untenable. And here, Leonidas makes a decision that I think is his most brilliant stroke of coalition management and strategic foresight.
He assesses the situation with cold, Spartan pragmatism. He realizes that delaying action has achieved absolutely everything it mathematically can.
Right?
To leave the entire 7,000-man allied army there to be surrounded and slaughtered would be a strategic disaster for the survival of Greece.
They need those guys for the rest of the war.
Those heavily armored hoplites are desperately needed for the defense of the Isthmus of Corinth and future battles. So he formally dismisses the majority of the Greek allied contingents.
He tells them to go home.
He orders the Arcadians, the Corinthians, the Peloponnesians to retreat southward immediately while the route is still marginally open, preserving their strength.
He decides to hold the pass with a skeleton crew, a rearguard. He knows if everyone just runs, the Persian light cavalry will ride them down from behind and slaughter them in the open.
Someone has to buy them time to run.
Someone has to stay and block the pass to cover the retreat. He keeps his 300 Spartans, of course. Spartan law forbids retreat anyway, and his personal honor demands he stay.
Naturally.
He also keeps the 400 Thebans, who Herodotus claims he kept almost as hostages to ensure the city of Thebes wouldn't immediately join the Persians.
Which, ironically, they eventually did during the final combat by throwing down their weapons and surrendering.
Yeah, that didn't work out great. But the most incredible, often forgotten detail of this morning, the detail we absolutely have to highlight, is the 700 Thespians.
This is a vital piece of the historical record that must be emphasized because it completely changes the narrative of just Spartan heroism.
Totally.
The 700 hoplites from the city of Thespiae, commanded by a man named Demophilus, were not ordered to stay. Leonidas explicitly told them to leave with the others.
But they refused.
They voluntarily refused to retreat. They actively chose to remain and die alongside the Spartans.
I want to pause on that because it's just staggering. We need to spend time on the Thespians. They weren't Spartans. They didn't have this lifelong death cult aguge training forcing them to stay.
No, they were citizen soldiers.
Why did they stay? I know their city of Thespia was relatively close in Boeotia, meaning if the pass fell, their homes were next to be burned, but still,
It's an immense sacrifice.
700 men looked at absolute certain death, looked at the Spartans and said, "We aren't going anywhere. We will hold the line with you."
It's incredibly moving.
They represent the absolute pinnacle of civic duty and voluntary sacrifice, and it is a tragedy that pop history almost always erases them to just focus on the 300 Spartans.
It is a remarkable testament to the spirit of the Hellenic resistance. Their sacrifice was arguably even more profound because it was purely voluntary, born of civic loyalty rather than rigid military law.
So you have this combined rear guard of roughly 1,500 to 2,000 men remaining in the pass.
And Xerxes knows he has them now.
Xerxes launches another massive frontal assault, timing it with the expected arrival of Hydarnes from the rear. The Greeks know this is the end. There is no relief force coming.
They have nothing left to lose.
So they don't even stay behind the safety of the Phocian wall anymore. They advance out into the wider part of the pass to kill as many Persians as humanly possible before they are overwhelmed.
It transitions from a disciplined defense into an absolute bloodbath. The Greeks fight with ferocious, desperate, suicidal determination.
Just giving it everything they have.
Herodotus writes that they fight until their massive ashwood spears literally shatter into splinters from hitting so much armor and bone.
Wow.
Then they draw their siphos, their short iron swords, and hack into the Persian ranks.
It is in this chaotic, horrific melee that King Leonidas is finally struck down and killed. And what follows is a massive, brutal struggle over his corpse.
They weren't going to let the Persians take him.
The Greeks drive the Persians back 4 separate times in vicious hand-to-hand combat to protect the body of their king from being taken, mutilated, and paraded as a trophy by Xerxes.
It shows the deep reverence they had for their king.
As Hydarnes' forces finally arrive and close the trap from the rear, the surviving Greeks, the remnants of the Spartans, and the Thespians take up Leonidas' body and withdraw to a small mound, Kolonos Hill, just behind the wall.
This is the final stand.
They are completely surrounded. Their swords are breaking. Herodotus says they are fighting with their smashed shields, with their bare hands, with their teeth. It's primitive, visceral survival combat. It's no longer a phalanx. It's a desperate brawl.
And at this point, Xerxes looks at the carnage and realizes that sending more infantry into this meat grinder, even against exhausted men, is just needlessly wasting his troops.
They are just too lethal up close.
Greeks on that hill are too dangerous up close. So he pulls his infantry back and orders his archers forward. The Persians surround Kolonos Hill and unleash volley after volley of arrows into the remaining defenders, finally overwhelming them from a distance.
What a way to go.
The Battle of Thermopylae ends not with a final glorious sword stroke, but under a literal rain of arrows. Every single Spartan and Thespian on that hill is killed. The delay at the hot gates is finally over.
The battle ends. The pass is open. But the true impact of this defeat was just beginning to ripple across the ancient world. Which brings us to the aftermath and what this all meant strategically.
Let's look at the big picture.
Xerxes wins the battle. He marches into central Greece, he sacks cities, he eventually reaches Athens, finds it mostly empty, and burns the Acropolis to the ground. But did he really win the war?
Strategically, the 3-day delay purchased at Thermopylae in blood was the absolute linchpin for everything that followed.
How so?
By holding that choke point, Leonidas and his coalition gave the Athenians the exact window of time they desperately needed to execute a massive logistical feat.
The evacuation, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Completely evacuating the civilian population of Athens across the water to the island of Salamis and the Peloponnese, preventing a massive slaughter or mass enslavement.
And crucially, it allowed the brilliant Athenian general Themistocles to position and prepare the Greek fleet.
Precisely. Furthermore, the continued consolidation of the Hellenic League under Spartan command, which was incredibly fragile, as we discussed, held together largely because of the inspirational unifying sacrifice at Thermopylae.
It showed they had skin in the game.
It proved the Spartans were willing to bleed for the coalition. It disrupted Xerxes' tight timeline, and it stretched his precarious supply logistics to the breaking point. This delay directly led to the naval battle of Salamis about a month later, in September 480 BC.
Which is where the Greek navy lures the massive Persian fleet into the narrow straits of Salamis. It's another bottleneck.
They applied the exact same principle.
They learned the lesson of Thermopylae and applied it to the sea. The Persian ships, though more numerous, lose cohesion in the narrow waters. They can't maneuver. And the heavier, more heavily armored Greek triremes just smash them to pieces by ramming them.
It was a disaster for the Persians.
It's a crushing naval defeat that forces Xerxes to retreat back to Asia with a large portion of his army, because without the fleet to supply them along the coast, his massive land force will simply starve to death in Greece.
Exactly. He leaves his general, Mardonius, in charge of a significantly reduced land army, which is then decisively defeated the following year at the Battle of Plataea in 479 BC.
And that was the final blow.
And that final victory was achieved by a massive, truly unified Greek army led by the Spartan general Pausanias. Plataea was the definitive end of the Second Persian invasion, and it preserved Greek independence.
Now, in our sources and in a lot of historical commentary, there's often intense discussion about the political rivalries between Sparta and Athens in the aftermath of these victories.
Oh, constant bickering over who gets the credit.
Who gets the real credit? Who sacrificed more? Was it Spartan infantry or Athenian ships? We want to be clear that we are simply analyzing the historical dynamics impartially here.
Right, we're not taking sides.
Neither city survives without the other. Spartan land doctrine at Thermopylae and Plataea, and Athenian naval doctrine at Artemisium and Salamis combined in a perfect synergy to save Greece.
It is a flawless historical example of combined arms strategy on a massive geopolitical scale.
But to fully appreciate the weight of this history, we have to bring it back to the physical ground, to the present day. Because Mick Prichter's research is so heavily grounded in what it actually feels like to walk this terrain today, to bridge the gap between ancient texts and modern reality.
It's so important to connect the history to the physical space.
Yes, let's talk about visiting the site today based on his first-hand exploration. Because despite the sediment pushing the ocean away, despite the receded coastline and the modern highway cutting right through the middle of the ancient battlefield, the geography still speaks to you if you know how to listen to it.
You can still feel the weight of what happened there.
When you go there, right along the highway, there are some incredibly moving monuments that anchor you to the event.
On the north side of the highway, facing east toward the direction of the Persian advance, is the massive bronze statue of Leonidas.
It's quite striking.
It was erected in 1955, primarily funded by the American Greek community. He stands there holding his spear and shield, looking out over the plain, flanked by marble tablets honoring the 300 Spartans.
And right next to it, and I absolutely love that they eventually added, this is the Thespian Monument, erected in 1997.
Long overdue, but beautiful.
It's a marble column with a bronze statue of the god Eros alongside a flame, symbolizing the voluntary, unsung sacrifice of those 700 men from Thespiae who are so often overshadowed by the Spartan fame. It's a vital, modern corrective to the historical narrative.
It really is. But the most profound experience for a historian, or really any traveler, is located directly opposite those monuments, on the south side of the modern highway.
Right on the actual hill.
It is Kolonos Hill, the actual site of the final stand.
Prichter describes walking up this short, steep path to the top of the hill. And there is a simple stone monument there bearing what is arguably the most famous epitaph of antiquity, written by the poet Simonides. Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here, obedient to their laws, we lie.
Physically standing on that hill, even with the modern highway noise and the receded coastline, allows you to physically grasp the micro-terrain choices Leonidas made 2,500 years ago.
It grounds the myth in reality.
You look up and see the looming Kallidromos Mountains to the west. You see where the hot springs still flow, smelling of sulfur. You realize how incredibly small, how violently intimate the battlefield was.
There wasn't a sweeping cinematic plain. It was a claustrophobic, brutal, inescapable arena.
It's the exact spot where geography forced an empire to fight on human terms.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground today. We need to synthesize this deep dive. What does this all mean when we put the pieces together?
It's a lot to process.
The Battle of Thermopylae was not just a suicide mission or a futile gesture. It was a testament to the intersection of highly disciplined, almost traumatic military training, the Spartan Goges, combined with an unparalleled tactical mastery of geographic choke points and micro-terrain.
And critically, it was bound together by a culture that weaponized stoicism, that laconic ethos we discussed, to command a fractured, terrified coalition and hold an impossible line against impossible odds for 3 crucial days.
It really was.
It was military science, psychological warfare, and geographic reality working in perfect, tragic harmony.
Absolutely. And a huge reminder that this entire meticulous breakdown, the digital terrain analysis, stripping away the sediment, the tactical insights into hoplite warfare, all of it was made possible by the incredible deep research and on-the-ground exploration provided by Mick Prichter.
His work is just phenomenal.
You have got to go to battlefieldtravels.com to explore this study for yourself. He has the 3D GIS fly-throughs there, detailed topological maps, and hundreds of other battle and campaign studies that peel back the layers of military history just like we did today. It's an amazing resource for anyone who loves this stuff.
It truly is essential. It helps you understand not just the what of history, but the how and the why, grounding ancient myths in physical reality.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought to mull over. We know the history. Xerxes took the pass. He conquered the terrain. He killed the Spartan king and wiped out the defender.
And he won the battle.
But by funneling his massive invincible army into a tiny bottleneck, by forcing the Greeks into a corner where their only option was absolute legendary defiance, did the Persian Empire actually manufacture the very myth of Greek invincibility that would ultimately inspire the Hellenic League to unite and destroy their own imperial ambitions?
That is a great question.
Think about that next time you hear someone say, "Come and take them."